There's a version of you that you've never met, not because it doesn't exist, but because no one ever showed you how to access it. I'm your host, Lo Jackson, and this is the You Only. Two books sit at the heart of this conversation: Invo Psychology by Timothy Leary and Prometheus Rising by Robert Anton Wilson. Let's get right in. There are layers to you, ways of thinking, feeling, reacting, that were built long before you were aware of them. Some of them keep you safe, some of them keep you stuck. And most people live their entire lives inside just a few of those layers. Survive, compete, think, fit in. That's the loop for everybody in pretty much society. But what if that's not all you are? What if there are parts of you that only show up when you learn how to slow down, to observe, to breathe differently, to question what you've always assumed was true? Because this isn't theory. People are already doing this. Therapists, athletes, high performers, even everyday people who get tired of reacting the same way over and over again. They're training their nervous systems. They're separating themselves from their thoughts. They're breaking patterns that didn't start with them. And what they find is something new. It's something that was already there. More awareness, more control, more space between what happens and how they respond. And in that space, there's a different version of yourself. So today, we're not just talking about ideas, we're talking about access. How to move from automatic to intentional, from programmed to aware. Because a fuller life might not come from adding more, but from accessing more of what you already have inside of you. There's something important to understand here. Not all of this model is scientifically accepted as a literal 8-circuit brain, but pieces of it, they map very closely to things that are well studied. And more importantly, the practices that move people through these levels, those are real, trainable, observable. So if someone asked, how do I access more of myself? Those closed, compartmentalized parts of my brain that I know are there. Here's what people in real life do. Circuit 1, safety. Before anything else, your nervous system has to feel safe. Not logically safe, but physically safe. One technique used in trauma therapy. Orientating. Slowly look around your environment. Name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can feel, 3 things you can hear. What this does is signal to your brain, I'm not in danger right now. This reduces amygdala activation, the fear center. And studies show it can slow anxiety in minutes. Circuit 2, power. This isn't about dominance the way people think. It's about agency. One proven method, posture, plus movement shifts. Remember, movement shifts are very important. How you move, because your physical movements affect your brain's electrical system. Standing upright, shoulders back, you have a purpose, slow, deliberate walking. It sounds simple, but research shows posture alone can influence testosterone levels, cortisol levels, perceived confidence by others and yourself. Even a 2-minute shift change, it changes how you feel. Your body teaches your mind, everyone. So there's circuit 3 now, intellect. This is where most people stay stuck forever because they confuse thinking with progress. A technique used in cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive diffusion. Instead of I'm failing, you say, I'm having the thought that I'm failing. What the heck's going on? That small shift creates distance and dominance over your thoughts. And studies show it reduces emotional intensity and increases decision clarity. You're not deleting the thought, you're loosening its grip. It's like, hey, Jack, get off me. Because your mind can have a real physical grip on you, everyone. Circuit 4, identity, social conditioning. This one runs deep, everyone. Most people don't realize how much their personality is inherited. One method used in psychology, values classification. Write down, what do I believe? Where did that belief come from? Do I still agree with it? Research and acceptance and commitment. Therapy shows that people who actively define their values experience higher life satisfaction and less internal conflict. And that's something that I had to learn because I was never taught values. And values is where your morals come from, and morals are where our personal ethics come from. You start choosing your identity instead of inheriting it. Circuit 5, body awareness. This is where things begin to open, and this one has very strong scientific backing. Slow breathing, psychological sigh, that long breath out. Inhale through the nose, short second inhale, long slow exhale through the mouth. Stanford research shows this pattern rapidly reduces stress, lowers heart rate, improves emotional regulation. Even 1 to 3 minutes makes a difference. Peace isn't an idea here. It's literally a physical state you can enter. Circuit 6, awareness of thought. This is mindfulness, but practiced correctly. Not forcing silence, just observing. Open monitoring meditation. Sit still and watch thoughts pass without engaging. Neuroscience findings: increased gray matter in the prefrontal cortex, reduced activity in the default mode network. So that's the rumination network in your brain. And it does that over time. People report something subtle but powerful. They stop reacting immediately. There's a gap. And that gap is where choice lives. And that's circuit 6. Circuit 7 of the brain, deeper patterns. This is where your script starts to reveal itself. And yes, there's real evidence here. Epigenetics shows trauma can influence gene expression. Epigenetics is the study of how gene activity is turned on or off without changing the DNA sequence itself, everyone. It's basically an extra layer of control that affects how your genes work. Family systems therapy shows patterns repeat across generations. A grounded technique here, pattern mapping. Write out in your journal, what patterns show up in my family? Anger, avoidance, addiction, shyness. Where do I repeat them? That's something you need to write down in there. This isn't abstract. It's one of the most used tools in therapy because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. You're no longer unconsciously inside it. Circuit 8, expanded states of the brain. This is where language gets fuzzy, so we stay grounded. What's actually supported? Long-term meditators show gamma brainwave activity linked to high-level integration, reduce stress of self-boundaries, increase compassion and well-being. A practical doorway, extended silence, deep meditation, even 10 to 20 minutes daily over weeks. Not instant enlightenment, but measurable shifts in perception. People describe it as less noise, more clarity, less me, more awareness. And that's what we're shooting for. So when you step back, this isn't really about unlocking hidden circuits. It's about training different systems of your mind and body, from survival to awareness, from reaction to choice. And here's the part that matters most. You don't just jump to the top. You build upward slowly, with deliberate movements with your body. Safety first, then control, then clarity, then awareness. That's how real change happens for everyone. Not all at once, but layer by layer, because that's how the brain slowly deciphers what's gone on in your life and where it sees that it wants to go. So if someone listening to this wants a place to start, it's not something complicated. It's this: breathe slower than you want. Notice one thought without arguing with it, and question one belief you've always assumed was true. That's it. Because accessing more of yourself isn't a breakthrough moment, it's a practice, repeated until something quietly shifts. Everything we've talked about so far, it connects back to two ideas, two frameworks, that when you really sit with them, start to change how you see yourself. The first is Timothy Leary's model of the mind, not as a single thing, but as layers, circuits, neurochemical transmission, one shaping how you experience reality, and the second comes from Robert Anton Wilson, who took that model and asked different questions. What if reality, as you experience it, isn't reality itself? Quantum. What if it's filtered? He called these filters reality channels. And here's what that means in real terms. Two people can go through the exact same situation and walk away with completely different interpretations. Not because one is right and one is wrong, but because they are seeing through different conditioning, different expectations, different past experiences, different internal narratives. So when something happens, you're not reacting to the event, you're reacting to your interpretation of the event. And that interpretation was building long before that moment. This is why two people can hear the same feedback. One hears growth, the other hears rejection. Same words, different reality tunnels. And once you see that, something shifts. Because now you can start questioning the lens. Not just what happened, but why am I seeing it this way? This is where Wilson introduces something powerful, something he calls belief as a tool. Instead of asking, is this belief true? He asks, is this belief useful? Because your beliefs aren't just ideas, they're instructions. They tell your brain what to focus on, what to ignore, what to expect. And over time, your brain starts providing those beliefs right. This is called confirmation bias, and it's one of the most well documented effects in psychology. You don't see reality as it is, you see reality as you expect it to be. So if someone believes people can't be trusted, they will notice every moment that confirms it. Ignore the ones that don't. And slowly, their world becomes shaped by belief. Not because it's objectively true, but because it's consistently reinforced. And this is where things are can get uncomfortable because it means some of the limitations in your life aren't coming from the outside. They're coming from the lens. But here's the empowering side of that. If your perception is learned, it can be adjusted, not instantly, not easily, but intentionally. And this is where Leary's higher circuits and Wilson's work start to overlap because both are pointing to the same shift from unconscious reaction to conscious observation, from being inside the program to actually seeing the program. Wilson actually gave people exercises for this, not theories, exercises. One of them is deliberately shifting perspectives, looking at the same situation from multiple interpretations, not to find the correct one, but to break the illusion that there's only one. Because flexibility is what creates freedom, rigidity creates loops, and most people are looping. Same thoughts, same reactions, same emotional patterns, not because they want to, but because they've never stepped outside of themselves. And this is what Wilson meant by waking up, not in mystical sense, but in practical ones. Seeing your thoughts as processes, not identity. Seeing your beliefs as constructs, not absolute truth. And once you reach that point, you don't lose yourself, everyone. You gain flexibility within inside of yourself to become who you really truly are. You gain the ability to respond differently to situations you normally would be chaotic inside of yourself about. You get to choose instead of repeat. And this ties back to everything we said earlier, because the higher circuits aren't about escaping reality, they're about experiencing it with less distortion, less automatic fear, less inherited bias, less unconscious patterning, more clarity, more presence, more awareness of what's actually happening instead of what you've been conditioned to expect. And I know people right now who have been conditioned to expect. And when you place expectations on someone, then people will never live up to those expectations. So when you combine that with real practices of breathing, like we talked about earlier, observation, pattern recognition, this stops being abstract. It becomes something you can live, something you can practice in real time, in conversations, and stress, in decision making. Because I used to be a terrible decision maker when I became an adult. I had no idea what I was doing because I had no values, morals, or personal ethics. And over time, I got beat down enough because people were like, "What's wrong with you?" Well, I was never taught those things. I had to teach myself those things. And that's where we gain self-respect. So, in conversations, in stress, in decision making, because every moment is an opportunity to notice I am reacting from an old pattern, an old circuit, or I am actually choosing this. And that question alone can change the direction of your life like it did mine. Not all at once. It took time, because you can really beat yourself down in your mind if you allow yourself to. But moment by moment, you learn. Choice by choice, you choose. Until one day you realize you're not experiencing the world the same way anymore. You've grown, and neither is the version of you that used to feel stuck. Until next time.